This evening, we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic.
Just stands.
Thank you. Item C is public comments. Since we are in a hybrid meeting, we offer public comment both in person and online. We do not have anybody with us in person this evening to share. Anybody online? Kevin? Marcus?
Not seeing any hands.
No hands raised. All right, so we can move right on to public comment. Item D, minutes. So could I get a motion to approve the attached December 21st, 2022 minutes?
Okay. Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion passes. Next order of business is E, which would be correspondence received 12/20/2022 through 12/30/2022, but we did not have anything included in the packet during that time period. I will mention, as I always do, that if, as a community member, if you're interested in reaching out to us, we do have a contact form on our the main page of our website at the very bottom. Please use that if you have any questions or thoughts you'd like to share with us, and we will certainly respond as quickly as we can to those requests. So we're going to move right on to reports. So report one is chair report. Very quick update, but I do want to say that we are happy to announce that Kat introduced Mia Grace to the world on last Friday, the 30th. So we say congratulations. Or was that 2 weeks from now? That was about a week ago. So we say congratulations to her. Everybody's doing very well and happy. So hopefully we'll have a picture soon to share of maybe even the two little girls together. Let's see. But very exciting news. Everybody's doing great there. That's all I've had to share for a chair report, which is great. So we'll go right on to town council liaison report.
Nothing to report. Absolutely nothing.
Excellent. Any questions for Donnie? All right, Board of Education liaison report. Anything, Sarah, or Beth?
Nothing to report.
Our next meeting is the 23rd.
Next meeting is 20th. All right. Any questions for Beth or Sarah on the Board of Ed? All right, 1928.
Nothing substantive to report, other than just a reminder from my last update at the last meeting, that January will be a busy month in terms of presenting to town council and coming back with schematic plans and cost projections. So more to report next month, but nothing for this meeting.
Okay. Any questions for Chris on 1928? Still targeting for right now, April, but based on anything else we might see.
So
okay.
hopefully by the second town council meeting in January, we'll have a better working with town council, the better cost projections and everything. So then just keep it on target paper.
Okay, perfect. All right, we will go right to owner's rep report.
Sure. So over the past 3 weeks, we've been working really hard on the GMP with ONG and the professional team. The professional team has continued to meet on our Mondays. We did not meet over the holidays. However, we had a very active holiday week with Farmington High School project and gearing up to getting our GMP ready to present tonight. So that's really been our focus.
So that's later on in our agenda for reviews. So any questions?
We submitted our reimbursement to the
Oh,
state.
that's right. So that's something else today, which is
Finally.
all right. We're finally there, which is great news. All right. Any other questions, comments, thoughts? No. All right. Architect report.
I'll just say a couple of words and then turn it over to Archana,
Yeah.
who has been spearheading the construction administration portion of the project for our firm. I've been copied in on a lot of the correspondence that she's been receiving. We're now in the submittal stage of materials proposed for the project through ONG from subcontractors. And that process has been going pretty well. we have Richter and Segan and SLR looking at the placement of field event things. I'm not a track and field guy, so I can't tell you what these things are, but something to do with the javelin, the discus, and shot put pads that were previously on the old site that need to be relocated. So we're gonna. They prepared sketches to show where they could go on the upper fields. And they've been working with Russ Arnold, and I don't know if ONG has been participating in those discussions.
Yes.
Great, so that needs to be added to the project, quite frankly. It's not in the project scope, I don't believe, in ONG unless you allocated some monies for that. So that would be a change to their contract to add these items.
Okay.
So that's the latest I know about that.
Is
Sure.
it additional, like, equipment that's going in, like, or is it just
No.
labor to
Site
prepare
work.
the site? Okay.
We'll know more at the next meeting.
Okay, all right, just to understand what the cost would mean and.
We don't have that yet. And I don't know whether you want to, we haven't even talked about it, ONG, as far as I know, about how to execute that. Whether that's a change order to your current site guy, whether you want to issue another package.
It would be a proposal plus,
It would be PR, okay,
proposal plus document, and then we have the site contractor price it up. We submit it to the design team and the subcommittee working group for review and approval. So there's a process, but we wouldn't separate out to a separate bid package, just a
Okay.
proposal.
all right, so that would be a proposal request process.
So apart from that, we are reviewing steel shop drawings, like submittal archives, so we completed area A and now we're moving on to, we're waiting for area B, steel shop drawings.
We're gonna see some pictures on the work that's been done today. A little bit.
Right? Do you have a video camera monitoring it as well?
I don't think that we have. a
What,
video.
time lapse?
Time lapse,
No, not yet.
not yet.
We
You
were
plan to?
thinking of, we're planning on something, but now that we have the low voltage contractor on board, we're gonna see what options that they can mount the camera up to the 900 building.
Yeah.
And just take some time lapse over the course of the project.
Okay. I'll keep quiet. I'll
We
wait,
don't have
I'll wait for
those,
the,
we don't have that up and running yet, but I do have some aerial shots, some drone footage.
And we just had a conversation of communications on. That's what it looks like. It can give you an update on how we integrate that for the community as well.
that's it from us.
Any questions? All right. Construction manager report.
Well, I'll give the construction portion of it and then we're gonna be reviewing the GMP. I think I'm in business.
It's a separate agenda item, yeah.
Devin, are you able to get those photos? I'm just gonna stand up because to go over the photos, and we took some aerial shots, site where contractor has drone, a drone available, and we were able to take some good shots. So this was taken early November, November 11th. It was before the demolition of the tennis courts took place. We were just setting up our job trailer. That's the staging area. And then the staging area goes from here over to where the tennis courts are. First order of business was demolishing the tennis courts so that we can put the under drainage, storm drainage detention system, because that's the staging area for the remainder site materials. We're stockpiling storage trailers, office trailers, and so forth. Over here, this green spot was the excess topsoil that had to go from this location back to the remaining landscape area. And then you could barely see them, but the trees were temporarily planted in that area. So you get a good vantage of the old high school, the 1928, the 900 wing, and the parent drop off loop, which actually will take you completely around the building, and then the library. Next photo. the one snowstorm that we had, this is where your old tennis courts were located. So this is the underground, storm drainage system. These are the galleys. They're currently, site contractor is currently, setting them in place, and then they put a layer of stone, over the galleys, and then over the stone is the subgrade. And you could see that they're already stockpiling some materials as well. Over here, you could see the plantings on the other side of the fence, arborvitaes and some pines, and a lot of it is buried under the snow, but that's the last of the site plans. So, this is about a week, this was December 21st. So George Gibbons, our superintendent here, is giving them orders as far as what to do. But that's him in the shop. They were putting one of the last remaining structures in that area. And you have the Euclid out hauling material, and this excavator here setting it in place. Next photo.
What are those yellow things?
Those are the galleys.
I asked that for the benefit of it. I know what they are.
The entire storm drainage of the entire site is dumped in here, and it acts like a detention pond. The water, storm water comes into the galley, and it just percolates into the ground. So you don't have to, over by the temporary parking lot, you see a detention basin. You don't have those open detention basins with this type of system. So at the end of the project, this is going to be a parking lot.
I have a quick question. This also cleans out oils and other things like that.
No
No?
oils there's a grease.
So where do we have to clean that out? Is that something that is an ongoing maintenance in the town in terms of where that?
There's monitoring wells, but those, you don't clean them out.
We won't ever need to go in
You'll
there.
never, yeah.
Okay.
You
have
have
any
manhole,
system
you have
like this
manhole
in town?
structures that feed that.
What's that?
No, manhole structures that feed that.
Yep.
That have sumps in it that will have to be cleaned,
Right here.
just from, road debris and sand and that sort of thing.
But never having to go in to see
Into
any,
Not to the galleys themselves.
gotcha, okay.
So
And do we have anything like this in town? Is there anything that the highway department? No.
We do these all the time on our sites. You do miniature setups like this just
Yeah.
for rain leaders.
But do you know if any of the highway department has any of these things that they monitor or?
I'm not.
I don't know about that.
usually don't use these for road, the road
Not for
job,
road,
unless you have
yeah.
a building, town-owned building that.
There's no other town-owned building that
I
needs
don't-
this. They can probably set up some other drainage system.
There really hasn't been any construct, these have been
That's
prominent
new.
for the last 20 years.
Yeah.
We've
Okay.
I don't think we have any town
times.
buildings other than maybe the community center that would even looked at it.
Yeah,
The benefit of it is that you don't have an open area where you're
Correct.
going to be collecting rainwater. It's all,
Rainwater,
and you can build on top of it.
Correct.
and even with those detention basins, you have mosquito problems, and
Sure.
here it's all underground. I only have a few more photos next. Oh, sorry, before you go to that photo. So this is the Briarwood neighborhood, so you can see the farm, and right now we have the fence with the scrim, but the trees will act as a buffer to that neighborhood. This is looking in that same opposite direction, but the parking lot. So over here, you already see the foundations for area A, the courtyard, three-sided courtyard, area B, the next classroom pod, and then this is the cafeteria area, loading dock area, and then you're going to progress over to the gymnasium and admin areas. They haven't excavated for those areas yet because of frost protection. They're not just going to go and open up the entire site. So, and over here you'll see these are ground blankets, and this is a ground heater, so that's all used for ground protection, so you don't get frost into the ground prior to concrete being placed. And then this is just a bird's eye view. Area A again, area B, the courtyard. This is the elevator pit. These are piers for your interior columns. Pretty much just footings. Footings that you see here, and they're already forming for the walls. And that photo was taken today. It's a very wet site, on days like today and with all the rain that we had. But everything's being contained on site. Here you see that they're forming the walls, and they're progressing out into area B. On this backside, you can't see in these photos, but the site contractor has been installing the storm drainage in that area as well. So the camera for the time lapse later in the project will probably set up a mast here. And then try to get some, a shot a week or or 2-year period, you'll get a nice video. I think that was it. So just general construction, the tennis courts, they're completely demolished, the old tennis courts, new underground storm drainage installed. Landscaping and fence completed on the east side where the old tennis courts were. Storm drainage on the north side of campus, excavation for footings, concrete, and the steel is also in fabrication. So we're expecting steel erection to start in February. And we're also working with TSKP with RFI responses, submittal reviews. So I think we're off to a good start. Any questions?
One question. So given how mild it's been, you must be way ahead of schedule.
No, we're on schedule.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions or thoughts, any other points of clarification? Super helpful, I think, right, to see the pictures, so, as often as we can for this committee, and then I'll talk a little bit about communications for the community as well, but.
And every month we'll provide 5 or 6 photos.
Yeah,
That's
great. Any thoughts, questions, nothing? Right, great, thank you very much. All right, so we will go on to communications subcommittee report. Just very quickly, we did meet just before this meeting on communications, hit really 2 major topics, which was kind of regrouping now as we're kind of starting the new phase of the project and then what that means to our communications. Now that we're on the other side of the referendum. So we do have a plan as far as communications out to the community that is going to be based on major milestones within the project. So it's not going to be necessarily a monthly update or anything like that on the website. It's going to be very milestone driven so that they can actually see activity and see something visual. So we're going to work on that from a timeline. Else we've committed to providing this kind of a timeline of the milestones for us to work towards. We will highlight those updates on the homepage of our website. So we're going to work towards that. The other big piece of information is since we did not have an opportunity to do a groundbreaking with sensitivity with the second referendum, we are moved the approach to a topping off ceremony, which we're anticipating somewhere around the May timeframe. So we're not committed to a date or anything else at this point, but we're going to start planning to that newsletter going out prior to that to increase engagement, and then also wrap a community meeting around that event as well to provide additional detail on the project if community desires to have any more information that we're going to provide on the updates on the website. So that was kind of the kind of a high level outline, and now we're going to work towards some dates with that. Continue to work probably on a monthly basis with the communications committee to make sure that we're going against that from a timeline perspective. The very first picture we're hoping to put up is a view of the very first picture you saw tonight, but without the tennis courts. Because right now the tennis courts don't exist. They're not there. So we'd rather represent something that is a kind of a clean look to the site, but a more accurate representation. So now someone's going to take a look and see if that's something that has matched those requirements a little bit better to at least give people a snapshot and give them some orientation based on some of their renderings of maybe the front door, the front entrance and where that sits on the site. But we thought that as a committee made a lot of sense for people to understand the relationship of the new school to the site as it exists today, and in relationship to the existing football field, what does that look like? And we thought that made a lot of sense to start the pages that way. The other piece we talked about is neighborhood communication, so making sure we stay engaged with the neighbors and giving them a way to communicate with us. So we do have a few people that did sign up for our communications that would be directly to the neighbors, and we're going to reach out, engage with those few members, and hopefully maybe expand on that list. But again, that's timely and relevant communication only. So something, if there's something that we really think the neighborhood needs to know, the direct neighborhood, we'll make sure that we engage in that way and send out communications, and then tying that all around social media integration as well. So anything that's super important, as well as using communications through the district and through the town to push out information, but only kind of when it's relevant. We're not going to be just sending updates on a monthly basis, just to send an update. We want to make sure that it's something the community needs or wants to know. Makes sense to everybody? Okay, the other piece of Q&A, if you happen to go out to look at the site right now, we have pared down the Q&A, if there's even anything. I don't even think there's anything there at the moment. We are going to build that on demand. So we are going to look to you as committee members and participants. If you're hearing questions or things that we're hearing repeatedly, we're going to make sure that we kind of curate that list for those particular circumstances. It's not one-off questions here and there and us trying to build something that only applies maybe to, you know, one person or another. It's kind of community-based questions that we think make sense, that we can get some solid answers to, so that we have a resource as a committee to go to for those repeated questions. All right. So the last report out is financial report. Anything new?
No updates to our financial report.
All right, anything else on that? All right, so why don't we move right on to new business? Can I get a motion to approve and authorize the town of Farmington to sign the attached O&G guaranteed maximum price, or the GMP contract document, inclusive of the GMP cost summary, trade contractor awards, list of alternates, schedule of GMP allowances, qualifications, exclusions and clarifications, and list of drawings, specifications, addenda and memoranda, contingent upon final approval from the town attorney.
Motion.
Okay. Right, we're going to open this up for some discussion and some obviously additional detail. But just as you know, town staff and the owners reps have reviewed the GMP and provided feedback, which has been incorporated into the final document. And then the town obviously reserves the right to give one last final review to the town attorney before final approval. I know some of that's been done in case there's anything that we need to do in addition, but that's our main discussion for this evening. So Mark will start there.
We're happy. So you have two documents in front of you that are stapled together. One's this AIA document 133, which is essentially the cover letter, the AIA cover letter that goes hand in hand with the AIA document that's been signed with O&G. So their actual contract, their contract. This is the last piece of their contract. We did a mini GMP for the enabling plan, which got rolled into this. And then you've got this other document here, this 30-page or so document that is the actual guaranteed maximum price of this. And if you go through, click on the table of contents, you'll see it has the cost summary. So we, over the last many months, years, been looking at, as we went through the design development, we saw a budget that we have been working through, and we did all of our value engineering, and we continually work to try to work into that their budget numbers to get to that to the budget dollars, right? So all of the O&G costs we've seen, mainly that's what we've seen to date, and we've been working to that 115.6 number, right? That we kept trying to get through up until bid day. Well, this cost summary that you see now incorporates the most recent referendum dollars. All of those dollars then go into the O&G total compiled number. And this breakdown that you see on this cost summary sheet, this exhibit A1, details all of the things that we've been seeing in those budget numbers to date. So you've got your site and building construction up top with phase 1 early enabling, and then phase 2, all the trade contracts that have been accepted, and that at the last building committee meeting, release of the remaining trade packages, right? So it was the initial, trade package, those initial 6 critical trade packages that we released, plus the rest. And you've got this $113,000 number for construction costs. And then we always saw general conditions and reimbursables on top of that. We saw them as percentages in the past. Now we've got our hard numbers here, which total about 4.5 million for $118 million cost of the work. Subtotal, there is a 3% CM contingency, which has been carried along, and we've seen every time in those budget estimates that have been up there. That's ONG's, we call it the CM contingency. That's their contingency to work with to cover costs that are unforeseen, that may have been incorporated in that might not have been in the buyout. Maybe it was missed in buy, right? So there's a lot of reasons that CM contingency comes into play. But it is different. That's different than the owner's contingency. So that CM contingency has always been a part of that original 115.6. It's not new. It's not a separate bucket that's controlled by the owner. However, when they want to use the CM contingency, the committee will authorize the use of that contingency for those certain items. And so there are certain things that CM contingency is used for and certain things that owner contingency is used for. This has always been a part of that main CM number. So now you're just kind of seeing it spelled out. I mean, we've always seen it spelled out, but there were some questions about CM contingency versus owner contingency. We just wanted to make that clear. Mark, I don't know if you want to highlight any other things that you might request to use or Nelson for a CM contingency.
No, actually something that Richard had mentioned just a little while ago about the play fields and adding those betterments to the project, if you want to call it that. That would be something that would come out of the owner's contingency. It's not something that's already on the drawings that we would have picked up as part of the GMP. So if you look at it, it's the complete set of documents that we have out there now that we put out the bid. Is we own that set, right? We have to build what's on those drawings. Anything that's not shown on those drawings would come from the owner's contingency. It's kind of an easy way to look at it.
And so that percentage is always built in. So if that 3% doesn't get spent, or a portion of that doesn't get spent, that comes back to the owner at the end of the job. And we might get to a comfortable point in the process or through construction where they might release some of that contingency. And in that case, that could get moved out of the GMP and into your owner's contingency for the change order. So as we get through certain portions of the job, usually as we get much closer to the end, is when we'll start to feel more comfortable about releasing some of that CM contingency.
So what's the owner's contingency? I'm sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead.
So,
Dollars.
Yeah.
Yeah.
so dollars wise, right now, it's a little over 6 million.
That was the number I had. I was scrambling. For some reason, I had 6 in my head, and I just.
So we're trying to set aside this $3 million has always been a part of that 115.6. The 6 million has always been set aside as owner's contingency. It's not been applied to anything other. We have spent a few dollars of that owner's contingency for those third-party consultants, like the steel inspector, like some of the things like
Kitchen, was it the kitchen one?
yes, so all of the ad services to TSN's contract, right? The theater consultant, the food consultant, all of that came out of owner's contingency. All the third-party consulting, the steel review, the shop drawing review, the professional engineering review for the stamp set, all of those things, all of those third-party things that you have all approved over the past several months have been paid for out of that owner's contingency, right? So it's probably a total of $200,000 to $300,000 out of that 6.1 million.
Well, that's funny. I was just because that's the number I had in my head, and when I see the contingency,
Right. So yes.
Is it fair to say that at this point, owner's contingency is if we run into something that we want to add or change?
If you want, if it's not included in the documents and it's needed, so there might or wanted,
Okay.
then yes.
Right, and obviously, because there's millions of details, there may be something that we thought was in there that might not be. Because obviously the plan sets are just.
We just ran into one.
Right.
This-
Track and
this
field.
one with the field.
Yep, right, so understood.
100%.
And we should also emphasize that the percentages are normal. These you would see on any school job of this size. A 3% contingency is standard practice in the industry for a job of this nature. And all of that money has oversight. Your design team, as well as your owner's rep, have the responsibility to review every penny of that in conjunction with your construction manager. So it's not as if it's a monitored and a process by which each penny of that will have to be accounted for and approved, which happens.
And didn't we just approve the fencing for the community garden from CM contingency at the last meeting? I think we did.
We did. So once we have the GMP signed, Nelson will be putting together our full CM report. And in that report that he'll be presenting each month, we'll have a full breakdown of all the costs of where they're going. So they'll reflect exactly what changes have been applied to our CM contingency and what the balance is for that. So you'll see, it's a great point that fence for the library area that's going to be hitting our contingency will be shown there as a line item, and then this number, that 3.4 million will be reduced by that amount.
So and then you've got your CM bonds and insurance and your CM fee. All of these, the bonds, insurance, even in the general conditions and reimbursables, where you see CM staffing, all of those were presented when we received the proposal from ONG back when we made our CM selection. So all those numbers have been the same since the day that we compared all of those different CM proposals and ended up awarding to ONG. So they continue to carry those staffing numbers based on their proposals. So the only thing that's really changed are the trade packages, and then how the percentages were affected on some of the other things. The 1.25% on the CMP, also what was presented in their initial proposal. So after the cost summary sheet, there is the trade packages. These are all the trade packages that were included as low bid trade packages. All of these trade packages have been vetted and scope review with ONG and the team. These are all the trade packages that you approved to move forward with these letters of limited notices to proceed. Yes.
How many, is there any place that identifies in within this or within particular trades with any areas that are identified as allowances that haven't been specified within the GMP?
So there are, in the specifications, there are trade allowances. So there are sheets of trade allowances that identify either lump sum dollars. For example, Miss Metals, I think there's a $10,000 number that the Miss Metals company that's providing all the miscellaneous steel has to include $10,000 in their bid. So there are lots of those types of allowances that are in the trade packages.
That go beyond what's specified, or?
Nope, so they are, well.
Yes and no. Yeah, they're typically put into the bid packages because we know we're going to need something.
Okay.
We just can't quantify it. So like for this instance on the steel, we might have had them carry 100 feet of steel lintels for the building. Because we know that at some point in time, there's gonna be a detail that might not be clear and we have to add a couple of feet of steel lintel. We'll just pull from that allowance. It's something that we track on a monthly basis and it'll be part of our CM report. So we'll have all the trade contract, all the allowances listed by trade contract with the values we're carrying. And then what dollars we have spent up to that point on those.
Are there any that you feel like the town might be at risk in terms of using its own owner's contingency to augment? Or would that never be a condition?
It can, if you wanted to identify, what we're trying to do is just trying to cover some of those minor costs that come up during construction.
Okay.
So Nelson and his team, they could just go forward and add that lintel without coming back to the committee and getting approval to keep the job progressing, right? If there's a particular allowance that for some reason we didn't show any lintels in the building and that allowance that we carried is nowhere near enough to cover that work, we will come back to the committee and say, listen, we carry this allowance, but it looks like we're gonna be going over and we should be carrying X dollars more to cover that.
So if it was something like AV equipment, that would be something where we'd be carrying a general allowance for AV
No.
stuff.
No,
There might be something that you tried to spec as much as you had, and if there was something else extra you might add.
Typically an allowance, I always use the example of, in the general trades, we'll always carry safety rails. We'll create openings where by OSHA standards, you have to put a safety rail. So we'll put so many linear feet of safety rail. We're not gonna go to the committee and say, well, are you gonna approve 150 feet of safety rail? We know we need it, we just don't know the dollar amount.
So it doesn't sound like there's any areas of where we
The quantity.
omitted specification and left that area as an allowance area that we would all be at risk if. The
no.
town said we
only
need these things and it doesn't fit within the allowance.
Michael, probably the biggest one that we have right now is the tennis courts. Because we are, in our GMP, we are carrying an allowance for the tennis courts. It's within our GMP and based on our clarifications that are within the GMP, any overages to that number is gonna come out of our CMP contingency.
Okay, good.
So we are gonna bid it probably a year from now. But we have that allowance covered. And I think that's probably the largest one that we have.
And that specific, those are GMP allowances.
Correct.
There's GMP allowances and then there's trade allowance. What I was talking about were trade allowances where it's already in their contract. And I'll have a separate report just strictly tracking those allowances. What Mark just brought up is one of the listed GMP allowances.
No, it's not. It's actually, it's in our, yeah, we're carrying allowance for this.
Correct.
But it's
not
right, but it wasn't, right, so the trade allowance, there's a specification section that calls out individual allowances, and those allowances are either
That would be
identified.
embedded in each of the trade things. There's nothing.
Already bought, okay, right, so they're already bought into the trade packages, correct? And
Yes.
so.
And I want to clarify one thing, they're all in the GMP. The trade allowances are in the GMP. The budget for the tennis courts is in the GMP, all covered by the GMP, and each item has been strategized and the values have been calculated based on past experience, consultation with the design team, consultation with the construction manager, and they have been procured in the public bidding arena from all of the trade contractors that bid on the job. So they were gathered, they'll be tracked. We look at them as in scope, they're part of the defined project cost. If for some reason one of them or more than one of them looks like they're not enough, we would come back to the committee like any change order and say we carried 10,000 square feet of X. And, we're projecting it's gonna be 11,000 square feet. Or at some point in time, we'll come back and say we carried 10,000 square feet and we're looking to only need 5,000 square feet. So there'll be a deduct to that allowance and a credit given back to the owner. But they're all defined, they're all distinct, and they're all in the GMP. And covered by the umbrella.
Right. And they're tracked separately. So at any point in time, we can tell you what is left in any of those allowances. So.
Right, but they aren't separate buckets of money like your owners, like your $6 million of owners contingency. They're built into trade packages, the trade. In each scope review, each trade was asked, did you carry the allowance of XYZ? Did you provide a unit price for square feet of? And had to identify in their bid packages where those allowances.
I guess I was searching for more other spaces where we felt as though when we got to GMP, that the design of whatever it is that would be needed, whether it was, I'm using AV as an example, wasn't specified enough. We couldn't drill down to that number, so we're sort of plugging that in with $200,000 set aside for that. And at the end, if it costs us 400,000, are we at risk for that?
One of the benefits that came out of the budget challenges we had was we're not putting the GMP in place until everything has been bought out. And everything is everything except the tennis courts, but we did get a bid on the tennis courts. But based on where it may be located, the underground conditions of the new location, there's some variables there, so it makes the most sense to not award that, to hold bid values and allowance in the GMP. And then put it out to bid when all the things affecting where it might be located are decided upon. January, February, March, so we should have a lot better picture as to the best location for the tennis courts, and then we can put a package together and procure it. But in the meantime, the GMP is carrying the value that we obtained at bid time.
So, I'm sorry, explain to me, so if it's over the allowance, then what?
We're gonna pull it from our CM contingency.
No,
In this particular case. Right.
With respect to the tennis court,
But in general, like if we're over
if
and above the
it's a
trade.
trade allowance and it's exceeded, or we're projecting to exceed.
Yep.
We would come back and that would be an owner change order, and that would come out of the owner's.
Okay.
Because right now the GMP is based on a defined quantity.
Yep.
Or dollar amount. And if we project at some point that that isn't sufficient, that would be grounds for increasing that budget, and that budget will come from the owner's contingency.
And if we're under, you said the PUC gets credited back.
Correct.
If we're just, even
Yes.
though it's allocated to certain trades, it's still just is getting.
At the end of the day, you're paying for the cost of the work. So you're paying only for the cost of the
I got it.
building. If there's any additional funds that are unspent out of our GMP, they are given back to you.
Yeah.
How would you, I don't know. Trying to find an example, so I'll pick a ridiculous one. The wood ceiling things, right? So, suppose there's something that we all came to understand part of what those wood ceilings are gonna look like, and there's some error or omission in what the architect put together. That now you look, you go, oh, you wanted what you thought you had there, it's gonna cost so much more. Where would a situation, if there was an error or omission, occur in terms of responsibility?
That would come out of the owner's contingency. If it's not on the drawings or the specifications, and you want to change it, whether that change is because it isn't what you perceived it would be, and there's a good reason that you vote to make that change,
Yeah,
or for some reason the architect didn't interpret the direction that they were given to your satisfaction, that would be an owner directed change, and it'll come out of the owner's contingency.
and have you ever seen situations where there are legitimate errors or omissions that then become the responsibility of the architects?
No,
You
that
mean,
never happened.
never.
It does happen.
I'm just trying to think of one of the boogeymen that we just need to, if now's the time we enter into this, how do we,
Sure, so. Sometimes the owner's rep keeps score
Correct. I was just gonna say.
and makes some judgment about whether that's truly an error or an omission on the part of the architect.
Okay.
I expect the owner's rep will be reporting to the committee its judgment about those things.
yeah. And so you would advise us if there was a situation where this committee felt as though that should be in here and it isn't in here, and the builders look at it and say, if you want it in there, take it out of your contingency. We say, wait a minute, we thought we told those fine gentlemen down there that and ladies that that's how it was supposed to be. So you would be the arbiter of trying to help us determine whether or not an
It
error.
would be,
omission
but
had
one
occurred.
thing you have to remember is, unlike a GMP includes a contingency value
Yes,
for mistakes that they might have made in their bio. Designers don't carry a design contingency,
That's correct.
so they're not sitting there with a pot of money for the, whoops, I forgot the gold trim around or whatever it might be.
yeah, the Morse code, somebody.
So
there's
if
somebody-
you were gonna hold them to an evaluation, you would have to pay for that responsibility. So, there are times when people get into a room and negotiate how to resolve a conflict, and that could happen. There's been a lot of cooperation from all the design professionals, and there's been a lot of review because of budget. So one of the benefits of having the budgetary challenges is there's been so many reviews of the drawings that we hope that we have all those things covered, but you can't do a job of this magnitude and not have any problems or any misses. But we've had 5 serious reviews of the budget, and we're feeling comfortable, but you generally don't go back to a design team and charge them because they didn't put something on the drawings. One of the ways we tend to look at it, if you haven't bought it yet and you have to buy it, you might not like that circumstance, but you didn't pay for it twice. It wasn't on the drawing. Nobody priced it, something you want to add to the drawings, you pay for it. If something's on the drawings that doesn't function the way you want it to function, those are where the challenges come in. Because now it's, so, we tend to look at them that way as we're resolving them as we go. But one of the things we would ask the client to think about is, and remember, so you haven't bought it yet, that's why you have a contingency. Is for those things that you might want that you haven't bought. If you paid for it, you want it to work the way it was intended. That's where we have to figure out a solution. And sometimes it takes a little contribution from all parties. Sometimes it takes some strategic thinking how to solve the problem, so it doesn't cost anybody.
But yes, we would track what might be what's and takes, or in this case, any types of what might be considered in errors and omissions, and at the end of the job might be something we come together to talk about in terms of what the owner thought they should have been provided, thought that the service didn't include what they thought they bought, then those conversations did vetted.
Or what the professional standard would be in terms of level of drawings or whatever.
Right.
Our CSG would be our advisor in that respect. Yeah, we would. Okay.
And in any event, along the process, the vehicle to pay for those is still through the change order process through O&G. There's never a direct, if there was a change.
No, it would
came
still
up
be,
on
we
cost,
improve that, and then
Right.
how to subrogate whatever that problem was, or offset whatever that is, you would then perhaps engage with other parties to say, will you help to offset the cost of this PCO?
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Good, so beyond the trade packages, we included the approved alternate list. These are the approved alternates that were identified in the building committee. Just note, these are the trade costs, and so they might look a little different than the numbers. Because with the alternates, or with the alternates that we presented, those included all the, right, the building committee asked for all costs associated with those. So any of the CM markups were already on those numbers. In this list, it's just the trade cost, the markups are included in that cost. There are a schedule of what we're calling GMP allowances. There are 3 items listed here. And the first one is the design scope clarifications after scope review. And so what that means is every one of those meetings that Laurel held with each low bid trade, there were things that came to light in those scope review meetings that were identified as not covered in their bid. And so we carried some of those post-bid revision clarifications that were made. And you can see the first one is we've got about $25,000 in miscellaneous equipment. There were, I believe this was for the some of the kitchen equipment, was a kitchen or lab equipment.
I think it's the lab.
Lab equipment. There were a couple of things that were identified, went back and forth with DSKP. DSKP confirmed certain ones were there, and that 3 needed to continue to be that were not in the specifications, but were part of or on the plan, perhaps, right? And so not carried, and so we needed to make sure that those things were included during buyout. Otherwise, they would be a change order down the road. Same thing with fire stopping in building F. There's $5,000 there in fire shutters in the classrooms. That equals $150,000. And then the second one, scope of work, assignment clarifications, unbought items established after the scope. So there were some things that were again, clarifications, a lot of conversations with the professional team, and identified that these things were in fact items that were established after the scope reviews. Some changes, maybe the clarifications that came that needed to be part of the job that weren't there on bid day or part of the bid scope, and so we bought these out through recovering these through the cost of these allowances. These numbers were in fact the numbers Mark, that we received from trade contractors?
They're kind of a mixed bag.
Mixed
They're
bag.
estimated, and we just need to further define the scope with PSKP. But
So, and then the last one is really the big one. So there's $1.1 million here for the tennis courts. Because it's not a purchased trade package yet, carrying it as an allowance, but it's marketed blend. That's the number that we carried. We would have had Miss Metals in this, if you remember, that one came in very last minute, but we were able to add it into the trade packages just prior to the previous building committee meeting. And then moving on to exhibit D, this is really all of the assumptions, qualifications, exclusions, and clarifications. So O and G identified, I believe it's 41 items that are either clarifications or, exclusions, things that they said are not, we're just clarifying these things are not in the bid. We interpreted them this way in the drawings. There are things even, some of these permit fees, GMP is based upon the project being sales tax exempt, right? So those are things that they just, some of these things are qualifications they put into most of their projects.
yeah, the boilerplate type.
Right, boilerplate, things. There were a lot of these items that we went sort of back and forth on, and made iterations to, but, we feel comfortable as your owner's rep, that we've come to a good place with all of these.
The town attorney reviewed these as well.
Correct.
And it was agreed with the final version.
So just out of
Yeah.
curiosity, so something like number 5.
Mhm.
Connections, disconnections, utility costs that are not included, where are they funded?
Other professional fees, that's that bucket that we have in the overall budget.
Okay,
We have a line item in there for.
so it's still project related, we're
Correct.
still covering it from a project cost, just not included.
Correct.
And we did, on that particular item too, we carried a utility allowance fee in the reimbursable cost.
Right.
Okay,
Yes.
great,
And
okay.
really, just to make sure that we have a bucket somewhere, whether we carry it or the owner carries it. We just want to make sure we have monies there to cover those costs that are gonna come to fruition when we start construction here. So I think we work together with CSG to make sure we have all those little buckets covered.
And then I'll cover it twice. That was the other part. Make sure we didn't carry the board back.
Anybody have specific questions on it?
No, I don't think we need to run through every,
You're talking about the.
Unless we wanna be here.
Yeah,
I don't, I have one question that, I don't think it's in here unless it's. I think it's in the other part of the contract, but I just wanted to clarify, did the town ever establish that there would or could we create in the other parts of the contract a liquidated damages clause for timing of when this happens?
That's in the contract.
That's in the,
contract.
not what I see tonight, but I think it's referred to in one of these sections, maybe. It's not in this document.
It's actually in A 133. It refers back to,
It refers back to, is it section 6 or something?
yeah,
I can't remember. I was looking at this and
yes, there are liquidated damages.
but it's in the other part, and not what we have in front of us. That's articulated.
What
there.
we established in
Okay,
our professional.
I just didn't see it in this thing, and I knew that it had come up before, and so I just want to make sure it's in the other parts of the document that we already signed up.
Anything the professional partnership committee had identified as will ended up.
Already.
Okay. And then just the last part of this is the drawings, right? So there's several pages of the drawings that were identified and confirmed with PSDB that these were the list drawings that were included on that.
All right, anybody have any other questions, thoughts, points of clarifications, makes sense, sounds helpful to walk through, so thank you. Everybody just kind of providing clarification on that. Okay.
Just a quick aside, right, if you look at that 124 and 836, that bottom line number,
Yep.
it was talking that 115.6, if you add that $9 million from referendum, essentially that's the cost.
That makes sense, everybody hear that, that's where we're, why we're, it's a little bit higher than what we originally talked about. Understood. All right, any other thoughts, questions, comments before we vote? Everybody online, you guys okay? Thumbs up. Excellent. All right. Why don't we go ahead and vote, for the motion on the table, all in favor?
Hi.
Opposed? All right, motion passes unanimously.
Actually.
Very much. Big step, everybody.
Let's build a school.
Let's do it. Got started, but that's.
We already started building the school.
Exactly.
Already in bed.
I know.
Before we go, I got a quick question.
Oh,
Do we anticipate, I know we had every 2 week meetings
Yes.
going through all the year. In this process, do you guys anticipate us meeting still? Not that I'm looking for
No,
to
no,
volunteer
good
myself
question.
somewhere else.
Yeah.
If you anticipate us like missing some of them because we really want to in the review, like now that we're going through this part of the process, or do you still see us kind of meeting every 2 weeks?
The third meeting, the weekend on the second meeting is the important meeting.
Yeah.
That's the meeting that we have invoices.
Okay.
Well, our monthly report is presented to the committee.
Understood.
We talk about the overall project schedule.
Right, so the finance committee, subcommittee will meet, on the second Friday of every month, and then the third Wednesday is the building committee, so it's really those two to keep the job moving and keep, funds flowing and keeping contractors paid, right? Those are probably the two biggest things the building committee, will be working on to approve. I would expect that we will start the FF&E and technology process in the next 2 months, just to kind of start to get a jump on what's happening, making sure that we're going to get materials and product timely manner. So we'll start, identify the group that's going to start that process.
Yeah, I think it's a good point, Jenny. I think we will probably start leaning towards one meeting a month now that once we kind of get our processes in place and we start moving forward, which would be that second meeting of the month. And then obviously, if you're involved with the subcommittee, we would engage in that way for communications on that same meeting, financials, second week of the month, and then pull in an additional committee if we need it, and then obviously there's the Monday meetings that are happening with a smaller group anyways.
In the Monday meetings for the professional team group, but then we've also got our Tuesday morning OAC meetings, right? So those OAC meetings happen every week on the job at the OMG's trailer, and that's really when we talk through the meat of what's happening.
So we'll have to try. I'm a little hesitant to delete the first one off quite yet. If you give us just a little bit of time, just to make sure we're all running smoothly and everything's
Try to just keep
good.
them in your schedule.
I know, we're gonna try our very hardest. But I think it does make sense for us to start with. In that
Can I
way.
ask a clarifying question? You were talking about moving forward on the tech and the FF&E. Do we need to go through an RFP process with whomever it is that we're engaging to procure FF&E, or is that through TSKP?
So we would look
Subcontract.
through state contracts to, so there's established state contracts with providers of.
Okay, so we won't have to go through an RFP process.
No, so we'll identify one or a few, right? And you can do different purchase orders.
For the most part, there might be some ancillary pieces of furniture technology that are on state contract. In particular, I know of one that we struggled with on one project is a piano. Believe it or not, a piano's not on state contract. So it's things like that. So as we go through the process, we'll identify the things.
Whomever the vendor is that we work with, we don't proceed, we have to, this another RFP process for that.
No.
That group. Good.
No, those, the items not on state contract, just go off the bid, it was the rest of my state.
Any other thoughts, questions?
Congratulations.
Everybody to the team.
The big
milestone.
And it is, it's a huge milestone.
And we already have a big hole to go.
And we're gonna stop saying.
We got a big landscaping.
Yeah.
Yeah. We wanted to like leave and we didn't say goodbye.
No, I'll make sure I drag her back here.
Okay, all right. All right, can I get a motion to adjourn?
So.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Hey.
All right, we will adjourn at 6:02.